Hey everyone, it's Gary here from Echidna Sewing, and today we're going to be taking a good close look at the Alfa Practik 9 sewing machine. Alfa is a new brand to Australia, but it's been around for a long time. In fact, well over 100 years, and if you Google the brand, you'll see it's been selling and they're very popular around the world. But now they're here in Australia, and this is the Practik 9 model. So right now we're going to have a look at all the different features on this machine, tell you what comes with it, and show you just how easy it is to use. We'll start with looking at what comes in the box. So when you open the machine, obviously you will get an instruction book. So a nice little book, tells you everything you need to know. But of course, our website is full of videos showing you how to use this machine and the various features. It also has a warranty card in there. Now the warranty in Australia is very, very good. It's a 2x2 warranty, so 2 years, full 100% warranty on it. And at the anniversary of the 2 years, if you get the machine serviced by us, we will extend the warranty entirely for another 2 years. So really it's a 4-year warranty. So anything mechanical will need obviously some oiling and attention from time to time, and by getting that done you're extending your warranty. So that's pretty cool, and that is explained on the warranty card. There is a dust cover comes with the machine, so that's obviously just put that on when you're not using it. That just flips over the machine like so. But of course you might be using it all the time and never get time to use that. Machine does obviously come with a foot control, so I've got it plugged into the side of the machine here at the moment, and I'm just going to pop that back there for a minute. We'll come back to that. It has a accessory tray that comes away from here, and this exposes the free arm of the machine. So yes, it's a free arm machine. You can do tubular things like cuffs and sleeves and smaller items like that quite easily by removing this, but inside the free arm is the little accessory case, or accessory bag. So we'll grab that out and have a look at what comes with that, and pop that back into there for a moment. So yeah, let's have a look at what comes with the accessories. Obviously you will get some spare bobbins, which we're going to wind in a minute. It comes with a buttonhole foot. So, and this has a one-step auto buttonhole, which we will show you. A little oil bottle. It comes with some spare needles and a little darning plate for using it as a free motion machine. A zipper foot is standard. A button sewing foot. It is so easy to sew buttons on these machines, so I'll show you that as well. A little cleaning brush, a seam guide or a quilting guide, and a little tiny screwdriver. We'll pop that out there, and a couple of little felt pads that go up on the spool pins. So we're just getting everything out of there, and these are what comes standard with the machine. But the good news is these machines use all standard presser feet and standard bobbins and standard needles, so nothing's too hard to get hold of, and of course we carry all the accessories for them. So we'll pop these little guys back up here on the spool pin, and in fact we might start up there. Let's pull this up. This is where your thread spools sit, and these guides simply come up to take different types of spools, and we'll put our little felt pad on there like that, and on there like so. So they just sit there. And yeah, I think the first thing we might do is have a look at the various components of the machine and explain what they all do. Starting at the top, obviously we've just talked about the spool pins. This is the bobbin winder spindle, so we're going to wind a bobbin very soon. The threading path comes through here. There's actually illustrations on top of the machine showing you how to actually thread the machine, and again we're going to do that in a moment. Coming down towards this area here, we've got the thread tension dial. All machines have a thread tension dial of some kind, so this is nice and easily got to there. This is the reverse lever, so yes, simple and easy to get to reverse. You don't have to come over to this side of the machine, it's just right at your fingertips there. Moving across, we've got the stitch width control. So this model has full stitch width control on all the different stitches, and this is the stitch length control. Now, what nice thing about these is they're a soft touch feel, almost like a rubbery feel, and nice and easy to grip, and they won't slip in your hands. So that's your stitch length, stitch width. Almost forgot. Pop this little panel up here, and here are all your stitches. Now this machine has 34 stitches in total, including a one-step auto buttonhole, which we mentioned before. Across to the side, we have the hand wheel of the machine just here, and right on the top of the hand wheel, there's a tiny, you can feel a little line on the hand wheel, and that's your standard stop position. So I'll talk about that in a minute. And this is the stitch selector dial. So that one, as we move that, you'll see the letter will change here, and that will tell you what stitch you have selected up here. It's LED backlit here, so you can actually see it quite clearly. I'm just going to leave it on stitch A, which is your straight stitch, and pull that back around for a moment. And of course, back down this area, we've got the your needle and your needle bar holder, or your needle holder. You've got your presser foot just here, and this has auto needle threading as well. So that's a real advantage on a machine at this level to have an auto needle threader, which is fantastic. What else can I tell you about here? Let's move this off again. This is the accessory storage and the free arm cover. And then we pop this down and you'll see there's your bobbin case. It just sits in here. Now these are all metal bobbin case, all metal shuttle system. We're going to pull that apart in a little while and show you how easy that is to get apart and clean. And that's basically it. That's the machine's anatomy. I suppose the next thing we can do is have a good look at how it works. But before we do, let's just pop this back on. I do want to make a little casual observation, if I may. Pop this back on. I do like the look of the machine. I think it looks really, really stunning. I love the color. I love the space. I love the fact that it's got a little bit of weight to it too. It's a full alloy cast machine, so the actual chassis of the machine is alloy. It's not plastic. It's an alloy metal, and when you feel it, there's actually a bit of weight in it. It's not light, like, you know, it's not going to bounce around the table on you while you're using it. It's got a really good balance to it, but it just is a nice looking machine to sit in front of. And I think that's important, and a little bit, it's a Spanish company, Alfa. I think there's a bit of pizzazz there. I really like it. So that's that. Let's now have a look at how this machine is to thread. Threading the Alfa Practik 9 is a really simple process, but you know, surprising, so many people really struggle with threading their machine. So if you follow the simple rules, it really isn't hard at all. Now there's all sorts of different spools and thread types you can get. You can get the little tiny kind of cops like this, which obviously just sit there very, very comfortably. You've also got your bigger cops. This is 1,000 meter, and it will also sit there quite comfortably. And you can also get the bigger cones of thread, and we'll talk about those in a little while when we talk about a couple of the extra accessories we have available for the machine. But right now, I'm going to take this 1,000 meter copper thread, and we're going to thread the machine. I am just going to pop it on here. Now sometimes you'll actually get a spool of thread that is a little bit unruly, and you can actually sit it on the right hand spindle, and you'll see here that there is, I'll grab my little scissors, hopefully camera will catch this. I'll just cut a bit of thread there, nice and neat and tidy. And there is a little tiny hole in this spindle here, and if I just pop that through there, oops, I'll get it in a minute. We'll just turn that spindle around a bit, and that will actually help stop this thread from overspinning, or the spool from sort of overspinning and the thread dropping down off the spool while you're sewing. So we'll leave that sitting there. Now, threading the machine, I'm first going to have to wind a bobbin, to be honest, because I haven't done that yet. But we will take one of the bobbins out of the accessory tray. It's an A-style bobbin. Now that is a very, very standard bobbin, so you'll get that anywhere. And we will just pop that up here for a minute. Now winding the bobbin, we just follow the dotted line here, and we just go into that little guy there and then around the little tensioner, and it shows you right there. Now, easiest way to do this is if you've got a nice clean cut on the thread, there's little holes in the bobbin. Honestly, just pop it through the little hole like so. Pop the bobbin on the spindle, push it across. So we've gone from left to right, and that has now disengaged the machine. Now hold this thread here, and all I've got to do is find my foot control and give that a little bit of a spin around. And we've now wound a little bit of thread on the bobbin, and all I do now is take my little tiny scissors and trim that thread off just there, and now we can continue unwinding the bobbin. And you don't always have to fill a bobbin if you don't need it. If you only got a little bit of a colour to do, just put a little bit of thread on there. I don't need to fill this bobbin, but if I did fill it, as this bobbin fills, it will push against this little cam, and that will disengage the bobbin so it can't overfill. And you can adjust that easily to have less or more bobbin thread if you wish. I'm quite happy with that little bit of bobbin. In fact, I'll go a little bit further. So very simple process. And that will do me. I'll just flick that back across, take that off, trim the thread, and I've now wound some thread onto my bobbin. So let's now take the needle thread and we will now thread the actual needle. So this time we're going to follow the solid line, and it's got numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and into the needle. So what I'm going to do here is I'm already in number 1, so we're now going to go to number 2. Now a little tip at this point, folks, make sure, and this applies to all machines, make sure your presser foot is in the up position. So the foot must be up when you are threading your machine. That means the tension mechanism is open and the thread will go into the tension mechanism correctly. So often we get support calls where people are threading the machines with their foot down, and you will get a bad stitch if you do that, most likely. So I'm now going to follow the numbers. So we've gone into 1, 2, 3, there's 4, so we come straight down, 5. Now, another little tip, when we get to this point, before we come up to the number 6, we must make sure that the take-up lever, which is the lever here that goes up and down with every stitch, is in the up position. Now, camera might be able to see it, there's the take-up lever, it is in the up position right there. But I know it's in the correct position if I can feel the little tiny line on the hand wheel. There's a little line there, camera will get a good shot of that, I'll point to it. And that little line is right at the top. That means that the machine is in the correct position for threading. If you don't have the take-up lever in the up position, you will miss threading the take-up lever, and you may very well jam up the very first few stitches you do, and that can be a little bit uncomfortable. So that applies to all machines. Doesn't matter what brand you've got to have that take-up lever in the correct position. And it's a common support call we get. So basically we know it's in the right position. We come up to number 5, and we now come across a little bit to the left and back down. That's number 6 rather. So that was 4, 5, 6, and then come down, that's number 7. And then we're into the thread guide on the needle bar. So you can see that guide there, and we just flick that in, and it must be in that needle bar guide. And once you've got that in position, we'll just hold the thread out. Now I do find it a little bit easier to put the presser foot down now, and we're going to engage the needle threader. So if we pull the needle threader down, so you just hook that thread under that little hook there like that, pull the needle threader down, and then take the thread across, and then let the needle threader go. But that is now the needle threaded, and now we've just got to put the bobbin case in. Well, we have our bobbin wound here, of course, and now it's just a matter of threading the bobbin case. And the bobbin case, of course, sits underneath the needle plate area. So we will just remove the free arm attachment there, open the little door up there, and there's the bobbin case, just sitting in snugly just there. Take that out, it has a little latch on it. Now these are a very standard bobbin case and very simple to use. So threading the bobbin, you'll see there's a little kind of entry point into the slot there, and the thread actually comes into there from the right hand side. So hopefully camera will get a good view of that. It falls into that slot and then goes in underneath the spring, and that is a correctly threaded bobbin case. It's really simple, and if you don't thread the bobbin case correctly, you're not going to get a nice stitch. It's as simple as that. Or if you've got, sometimes you might have some lint or fluff caught in under that spring, and that will stop it from stitching correctly. Again, these are standard things on most sewing machines. So if you have a removable bobbin case like this, always keep it clean. And you should feel when you've threaded that a bit of like drag or tension on that thread, and that's perfectly normal. So I'm just going to cut off that big tail there. And generally speaking, I leave a couple of inches of thread sitting just in front of the bobbin case like that. Now loading the bobbin case in, it's actually easier just to hold the latch out a little bit. Don't hold it all the way, just a little bit. And this little arm goes in towards the top. Now I'll just tip this back a little bit, and let me just show you here. You can see there's kind of a little, hopefully camera will get that, there's a little tiny slot or opening in the hook race there, and that's where that little lever goes. So it sits towards the top. That lever goes to the top. So just hold your bobbin case latch out, put it in until you kind of got it in the right position. And then what I like to do is give it a push and make sure you hear it click. Again, typical things that people do on sewing machines is they don't push the bobbin case in correctly, and then when you start sewing you can jam up your machine. So as long as you hear that click, the latch will be sitting basically horizontal like it is there, and the lever at the top there, or that little arm, will actually be in that little sort of recess that I showed you before. That bobbin is loaded correctly, and now all we need to do is draw the bobbin thread. So if you now hold your needle thread in the left hand and turn your wheel, the hand wheel, towards you, one complete revolution, you'll see the bobbin thread has now been pulled up to the top, and now all we do is just lift the presser foot and put both threads out to the back of the foot, and we are now ready to sew. The machine is threaded perfectly. Now I'm going to leave the free arm cover off because we probably will have another look at the bobbin case area in a few moments. I'm just going to take a piece of white fabric, and I'm going to double that over. Actually, I might double it this way because we're going to do a few different types of stitches on here. Now, it is important to make sure those threads are back under the foot, because that means that everything will start beautifully for you when you start stitching. And I'm just going to pop that fabric under the foot just there like that and put the presser foot down. Now we need to choose a stitch, and that's the fun part. So let's have a look at the stitch panel up the top here. You'll see that we've got 3 rows of stitching, and the first row is your basic utility stitches: straight stitch, zigzag, your elastic stitch and blind hem stitches, and a couple of decorative stitches. The most commonly used stitch of the lot is still going to be straight stitching, so we're just going to make sure we're on A, which is the first one there. Obviously the stitch selector dial is here, but that's what we want, is A. This dial here will set the stitch length, and I'm going to go to just about 3 there. And this dial is the stitch width. Now while we're on A, we're only going to have a straight stitch. So if this dial is moved to any other position, it just changes the position of the needle in the foot. So you can actually use that function to have the needle over to the left hand side of the foot, but you're still doing a straight stitch. That's very handy when you're doing zips and things like that. But we'll leave it on 0, which is the center point. In fact, there's a little tiny indicator there that indicates the needle is in center point there. So stitch is set, we're ready to go. So I'll just grab my foot control down there, and we'll just do a few stitches down the machine, and there we go. So we're stitching away, and when we get to the end of whatever we're doing, we'll just stop. Again, if you want the needle in the correct up position, you can just turn the wheel until you feel that little line on the hand wheel, and that machine is in the perfect stop position there. If you are pivoting around a corner, maybe you're doing a long stretch and you want to lift the foot and reposition the fabric, it's a good idea to have the needle in the down position, and that way we can now pivot. So if I was turning a corner, I can just lift the foot, and now I can continue sewing down the next side of the seam. And we'll just come down to here. I'll leave the needle in the down position, and we'll come down and finish that little sort of U section there. I might take this opportunity to trim that excess thread off there, but this time what we'll do is, when we get to the end of the seam, we'll use the reversing function to back tack or secure the seam. So if I come down to the end of what I want to stitch, and let's say I've got to the end there, right on the end, and now I can hit that little lever and I can back tack a couple of times, take the presser foot or the needle to the up position, make sure that little line on the hand wheel is right at the top, and now I can very comfortably and easily pull the thread out towards the back and trim the thread there, and you can see I've got a lovely little sort of lock off or tie off or back tacking stitch there, and there's my stitches underneath. So perfect stitching. Now the reason I say make sure you stop with the presser foot, the needle in the correct position, is I see so many YouTube videos and people on Facebook saying, oh, my machine's not working and I can't pull the thread out. And I'm going to show you what they do. So I'm going to sew down a little seam here. In fact, this time I might actually do a little reverse at the start as well. So if I wanted to back tack the start of my seam, I'd just do a few stitches forward and then a few stitches back, and then We'll get down to this position here. We'll do a little back tack, so we've finished another seam. Now here's what happens. If you turn the machine's hand wheel and you have the needle in the up position, but the take-up lever isn't up, or in other words, this little line on the hand wheel is not in the correct position, if I go and try and move that out now, I can't pull it. I can't get it out, it's really tight. So you must make sure you always finish in the correct position, and that is where that little line is in the correct position on top of the hand wheel. That means the take-up lever is in the correct position, the thread's not still caught around the bobbin case, and you can pull the thread straight out. That is a little tip, and that applies for all sewing machines, and it's a very common problem that we do get questions on, and it really is just user error, that's all. Often it's just because you're not aware of it, and that's just a little bit of education. All right, so very simple to do a straight stitch. Let's say we want a zigzag stitch. That's going to be stitch B. So we just simply move our stitch selector across to B, and the same rule applies. We've got our width control. If we are on 0, we've got basically a straight stitch, but the wider we take that, we will get a zigzag. So I'm going to go out to a full zigzag, and I'm going to make the stitch length a little bit smaller down to 2, and let's see how that goes. So we'll just pop our foot down, and now we have a zigzag stitch. And that is the second most used stitch of all, straight stitch being number 1, zigzag being number 2. We'll turn that around and we'll come down this way. Now I might choose a different stitch or a different width. So if you're going to adjust any of your stitches, always make sure the needle is up. Again, make sure that your hand wheel has got the little line at the top. If I wanted a narrower zigzag and maybe a smaller stitch length, you'll see what we get now. A much smaller zigzag and a much smaller stitch length. These are very powerful machines too, they just ooze power. They have a really nice solid feel. We're going to pivot there, so I'm just going to lift the foot, turn around, and let's just choose another stitch, and then we'll have a look at something else. So I might go to C, stitch C. That's also a very common stitch. We call it an elastic stitch, or a 3-step zigzag stitch. And we're going to go to C now. Stitch length I'm going to leave fairly small, and I'm going to go up to a full stitch width. And this gives you a lot of stretch. Might even go a little bit smaller in the stitch length. Pivot down around there now. Now that stitch basically does 3 steps across and 3 steps back, so it pivots very, very well. It's a great stitch to use when you're putting elastic in, or you just need a lot of stretch, because it will give you that stretch. Okay, we've got blind hem stitches and decorative stitches. We're not going to touch on those at the moment, but what we will do is have a look at this S1 and S2 function here. Now what they do is basically give you what we call triple stitching or stretch stitching. And I'm going to take my needle up again with my line at 12 o'clock right over here, and I might go back to stitch A for this time, and we're going to go to the S1 setting. Now S1 setting is here on the stitch length dial, and all I've got to do is pull that around to there, and I'm going to go back to my 0 setting there because I want it to be just a straight stitch in the center position. And this gives you your triple stitching. And you can see the machine's going 2 stitches forward, 1 stitch back, 2 stitches forward, 1 stitch back. And this is a very, very, very strong stitch. So it's what we call a triple stitch, and it's great for doing on heavier fabrics. If you wanted to get a heavy thread effect on denim, you could use that there, but it is strong and it will give you a degree of stretch as well. We might change that to zigzag now and have a look at that. So we would now go to stitch B. I can leave this where I've got it, but I might take it out to a bit bigger stitch length. And we'll come back down this way. And you can see that triple stitch effect. It's often also called a rick-rack stitch. And there's all sorts of terminology in the sewing industry. And we'll pivot around there and come back, but you can see that beautiful solid zigzag. It's very decorative and very strong. So as you can see, pretty simple to use. So what would happen now if we went to the S2 setting, that will be the row of stitches underneath that. So for example, if I wanted to have a look at stitch D, which is giving me this kind of blanket stitch here, so we would go to D, and we would now move across to S2, and we would leave it on a full zigzag width, and I can start sewing there. So let's have a look at what happens. And we'll pivot around just there. I'll take my needle to the down position while I pivot, and you can see there we have a lovely little blanket stitch, and you've got that on both sides. I'll just trim that little bit of thread off there. And if I came and chose a different stitch here, let's say stitch E, again, put that foot down, take your needle to the up position with the line on the hand wheel at the top, and let's go to E, and we're still on S2, so that will give me this stitch right here. So choosing your stitches is very easy. And it's that simple. We might take that out there at this point and have a look at what we've got. So trim that off. There is actually a trimmer around the side here as well, so you can use that just there. And that makes it a bit easier than picking up your scissors. But all those stitches are very, very simple to choose. And you've got overlocking stitches as well, and over edging, and all sorts of fantastic stitches, and it's really well featured. The other thing I'll point out too, which I don't think I mentioned before, is it's got a fantastic LED light for the work area. So there's an LED light behind the stitch selector, but there's a beautiful bright LED light above your work area, so it's nice and easy to see your work. And of course the benefit with LED lights is they don't blow like the old style bulbs or globes we used to have in machines, which you always seem to be replacing. LED lights are much more reliable. Let's have a look at the buttonholing mechanism now. There's no doubt one-step automatic buttonholes have made creating buttonholes a lot easier than the old days, and a one-step automatic buttonhole foot looks like this guy here, and it has a little slide that comes out, and you can open this out, and the button will actually sit in the back of the foot, so we can just zip that button like that, and that's going to measure the button for us, and it's really foolproof. Now, changing over is really simple. All you need to do is, there's a little tiny lever on the back of the presser foot here. The camera might be able to get that, I think. We just drop that off there, and we now slide the buttonhole foot underneath with the hole for the needle, where the needle goes through at the front, and we just drop that foot down on the little bar there, and till it locks in. You just got to position it correctly. That's all locked in. And I'll lift my foot back up. Now there is a lever just here. This is the buttonhole lever, and we just need to pull that down all the way, and then we can move this back around here again. I hope that's in the right position. And now we just choose the buttonhole. So the buttonhole has its own setting, and all we need to do is go to that setting which is just before A, buttonhole right there. And there's a buttonhole symbol on the stitch length dial, so we just move that around to there. The closer you are to 1, the longer the stitch length will be for the buttonhole. The closer to 0, the more compact it will be. I generally go just past halfway, closer to 1 than 0, and I find that works pretty well for me. And we leave the width right out on 5 because you want a reasonably wide buttonhole. And it starts at the bottom of the buttonhole. So if I was wanting my buttonhole to start down here, I would simply place that below the needle. And before we do that, we'll just make sure our machine is still threaded, of course, but we take this little lever and it says push. So we just push that lever backwards, and that's now engaged it for buttonholing. And quite often you don't have to, but sometimes it gives you a nice effect to just loosen the tension off a little bit. It just gives you a more rounded sort of buttonhole, but to be honest, I'm going to leave it where it is on 4, which is your standard setting. We'll see how that goes. So pop our fabric under the foot. Now, you've got your thread sitting above the presser foot. Now, some people will tuck that thread in through the hole in the foot. To be honest, I do it this way. I just pull a little bit of extra thread out before I put the foot down, put it down where I know I want it to start, and then holding the thread just gently, whoops, I'll grab my foot control, I just give it a couple of stitches there. And once I've done that, I'll grab my scissors and I'll just trim that thread back pretty close to the needle, and now we'll just continue going. And the buttonhole will actually create itself. I don't need to do anything, I just let the machine do the work. And when it gets back down to the bottom, just run a few more stitches at the bottom there, you know, half a dozen stitches just to lock it off. Remember, this is a lock stitch machine, so it by nature will tend to lock the stitch for you. And now we just turn the wheel until the line on the hand wheel is at the top. And we can now lift the presser foot, slide that out, trim off that little bit of thread there that we don't need, and trim off that back thread there. I'll take the button out of the back of my foot, and there's my perfect buttonhole done. How easy is that? One-step auto buttonhole on a machine like this at this value is fantastic. So you'll be able to do buttonholes to your heart's content. If you have buttonholes, you probably need to sew on buttons, and again, I'm going to show you how easy that is, because you'll never do it by hand again, I can assure you. So let's have a look at button sewing. Now we do need to change a few things over for button sewing. The first thing we'll do is we finished our buttonhole, so we're just going to push that lever back up. Once we don't have any more buttonholes to do, just pop that back up out the way. We'll drop the presser foot off, the buttonhole presser foot, move that back there. And we do have a what we call a darning plate, or a plate that covers the feeders. Now some machines will have a feed drop mechanism which will drop the feed teeth out of the way. This one has a little plate that goes on top of the feeders, because when we're sewing buttons on, we don't want the feeders to be engaged, the feed teeth. So we take this little guy here and we pop that on just here, so that that needle hole sits above the hole in the plate sits above the needle hole in the needle plate. And then draw your bobbin thread up. So just turn your wheel towards you and draw your bobbin thread up to the top of that plate, and then we can trim that off. Remember, there is a trimmer on the side here too, but I'm sitting at the wrong side to be doing that. And this is what we call the button sewing foot, and it's a simple process. I'm going to sew this little button on. It's a 2-hole button, and we're just going to pop this foot on, and it goes on with the blue section to the front, and the presser foot just slide that in there. The shank of the foot, or the shank, just goes onto the little steel bar, and that is now in position. And what we can do, if I'm going to sew this on beside the buttonhole there, we just lift our presser foot, because you've got extra lift. Put the button up. Oh, it doesn't matter on this one, it's either way. But you basically position it so the button, the holes of the button are positioned just neatly. Hopefully camera can get that in that little blue sort of area there. We've now don't care where the stitch length control is, because the feeders have now been covered by that plate, so they're out of play. But we do want to make sure that we're on zigzag stitch. So if we go to stitch B, and now we just need to turn the hand wheel, set it to the maximum width, turn the hand wheel a couple of times, and just make sure that the needle is going down in the actual holes of the button, and mine is perfect. If it's not, we just stop, we just lift the foot a little bit, and we move that button so as the needle is going down in the holes. If the holes of the button are a bit closer together, you may need to adjust your stitch width. But I'm telling you now, once you master this, sewing on a button it's effortless, it really is. And all I've got to do now is do a few stitches. I usually do about 20 or 30 stitches in there, maybe not 20 or 30, maybe 15. It doesn't really matter. That's probably closer to 20, but that's a lot. And now if I take the needle to the up position, I can pull that out. And we can do two things here. Some people will cut off a slightly longer thread and actually tie them off, or put it through to the back with a hand needle. To be honest, it's a lock stitch anyway. It's not going to come apart. I can just trim that off. And that is sewn on really quite well. That isn't coming off, I can assure you. There's a lot of stitches on that. That took me, in reality, once I had the button under there, probably about 5 seconds. And if you're doing a whole shirt and you've got a whole heap of buttons on, there's no way I'd do it by hand, I can tell you. So button sewing, and that's included in the machine. The good news is there's, as I mentioned at the start, all the different presser feet on this are very standard. We have loads of different feet in stock and available as accessories, and they're very, very inexpensive. So I think most presser feet are about $10 or something like that. So you can get extra darning feet and rolled hemming feet and all sorts of types of wonderful things, and you'll see those on our website. It does also come with a zipper foot and a little tiny screwdriver for taking your plates off and you know, cleaning out your machine. So a little oil bottle. In fact, I'll quickly show you how easy it is to maintain this machine. Let's just take this foot off now that we've done a button. We'll take that away. We don't need the little cover plate, but of course if you were darning or doing free motion stitching, that's the plate you would put over the top of the feeders. And there's the screws that hold the needle plates on, and this is the little screwdriver that will allow you to get that off. So it's very simple, just take those off, clean out in your machine. The most common thing you will do on a regular basis is you will clean this little shuttle area here. And we have a video basically going through the maintenance of it. But one of the nice things about this mechanism is if, you know, things can sometimes go wrong. You can sometimes jam up, you get thread caught somewhere, and on some machines that's a bit problematic. You've got to kind of fiddle around and fix things up. On this one, if you've got a thread jam or something has gone wrong or it needs a clean, these little black levers just pop across like so. This pops out, and there's your hook race out in your hands. So you can clean that out, clean out in here with the little brush that they give you. If you've got any lint or fluff caught in this area here, just clean it out. And at that point you can also pop a bit of oil on the race just there. And oiling that race on a regular basis is important. And then putting it all back together, it's just a matter of putting the hook back in the opposite direction to the driver there. So it just sits in like so. I'll get my hands out of the way in a minute. So that just sits in there like so. And then this guy, there's a little pin down the bottom, and that goes into a little slot down the bottom here. So you can't do it wrong. Pops in to the right position there. That's it. And then you just slide these little black levers across, and you've now taken the shuttle or the hook out, and you've cleaned the machine and you've re-oiled it, and it's all set to go. So no matter what happens, even if you have a big sort of kerfuffle, you can easily clean your machine out. Most common reason for it is people not threading the take-up lever, and that can happen on any machine if you're not careful. We'll pop the bobbin case back in. That's all loaded, and we're back good to go. We'll put our standard presser foot back on. And we're all set to go back to normal stitching. If I wanted to go back to my standard straight stitch, we'd go to A, 2 to 3, back to 0, we're back to a standard straight stitch machine. So that's a bit of a run through on the Alfa Practik 9, just again pointing out the key features on this machine. Good range of stitches, stretch stitches as well, auto needle threader, and one-step automatic buttonhole, free arm, solid alloy chassis machine, and a nice little bit of weight to stop it bouncing. It doesn't bounce around the table. Feels good, looks good, and is super reliable with a great warranty. And I'm just going to point out one other little accessory that we have available that we designed here, and I think it's a real game changer for using some of the more the economical spools of thread. So these are the little mini cones of sewing thread, and to be honest, it's a great way to buy thread. It's much more reliable, and I'm going to take this green thread out, and here's a little tip when I do this. Whenever you're changing threads, you never pull thread backwards through the machine. You always pull it forwards through the machine, because if you pull it backwards, you can get thread caught in your tension, and then you may not get a great result when you next use it. Now, there's a problem with this little cone on this style of machine, or a lot of machines, is that I don't want to have to sort of pull it off and have to turn the weight of this spool. So we've designed this little gadget here, which is available on our website. Super simple, great product, very, very inexpensive, and it allows you to use the bigger, more efficient cones of thread like this guy here. So threading the machine now, the thread is coming straight off the spool up to the little hole there and then down into the machine. So it's a great way to use the more efficient spools of thread that are fast becoming the most popular spools of thread in the marketplace. There's a load of other accessories available. Check out our website, watch the videos, contact us if you have any questions about this model. Alfa, as I said at the start, is a global brand. They're a Spanish company. We're very excited to be the distributors and the agents in Australia for this brand. And this basic little range of simply mechanical machines is designed for people who just don't want to go into the whole computerized thing. And look, we do get inquiries every week about, mechanical machines. I'm really, really happy with these, and I'm sure you will be too. And of course, you get all our support and education, and any help you will ever need, we'll be there to help you. So I hope you found that video interesting and informative. If you have any other questions, contact us by the normal means. And until next time, happy sewing.